Yo, what's up, everybody? It is episode 37 of Expanded Understanding. It is May 27th, 2020. I want to thank you all for being here. If you are watching in the replay, please like and subscribe and check out our community events and our social media groups and such that are in the description below. Didn't really know what to talk about tonight. So I've spent a lot of time listening to a guy named Terence McKenna. If you haven't heard about him before, I recommend looking into him a lot. He has a lot of interesting ideas and a lot of interesting philosophies, and he explored a lot of really interesting concepts. So I was going to play a video of his tonight to kind of set the tone for something to talk about. And this this video, the one that I happened to just grab, it was the first one that popped up, is titled "Decondition Yourself from the Lie of History." So I'm pretty interested to see what he has to say about this. He's got pretty interesting things to say about just about everything, and usually has a pretty interesting way of saying it. One of the greatest parts about Terence McKenna is how good he is with words, and really just his ability to slip a joke into the weirdest places. So I'm sure you'll probably end up seeing some of that in this video. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it. I really appreciate all of you being here tonight. Charlotte, Willow, anybody else who's around. Thanks for being here. Love you very much. Like, subscribe, etc. Here's Terence McKenna, the great bard.
Okay, now I will talk a little bit about what I've learned from psychedelics. I feel self-conscious doing it, but on the other hand, wouldn't it be stupid for me to talk about what you've learned from psychedelics? That would add presumption to the sins already arrayed here. There are different models about what the psychedelic experience is. Here's a couple. Building on Western psychotherapy as elaborated by Freud and Jung, one view of what psychedelics are is it's the part of your mind that you'd rather not do business with. It's the memories of childhood neglect or abuse. It's repressed, kinky fantasies. It's, in other words, the Freudian idea of the unconscious, that somehow these are drugs which dissolve the boundary between conscious and unconscious mind, and then you can do accelerated psychotherapy because resistances have been pharmacologically overcome. That's one model. It's good as far as it goes. It just doesn't go far enough. Then there's another model, which I would call the traditional or shamanic model. And it says the cosmos is a series of levels. And these levels are connected by vertical routes of access, which can be thought of as simply flights through space, or magical trees, or magical ladders. Anyway, there's an image of ascent. And ordinary people exist on only one of these levels. But a shaman is not an ordinary person. A shaman is a superhuman person who has the power of animal allies behind them, and they can go up and down in these elevators that move between levels, and they can therefore recover lost souls, see social hanky-panky, theft and adultery, see the causes behind that, see the causes behind disease, so forth and so on. That would be the traditional one. What I have concluded after 25 years of fiddling with this is that both of those ideas have a certain something to recommend them, but that they don't go far enough, and that we get more to the meat of this if we leave off psychological, the first explanation, or sociological, the second explanation, and actually go for something a little more formal, to wit, a mathematical model of what shamanism is. And what I mean by that is, let's think about what shamans do. They cure disease, And another way of putting that is they have a remarkable facility for choosing patients who will recover. They predict weather, they're very important. They tell where game has gone, the movement of game, and they seem to have an paranormal ability to look into questions, as I mentioned, who's sleeping with who stole the chicken, social transgressions are an open book to them. Well, thinking about this from a mathematician's point of view, an all-encompassing explanation that would explain how all these magical feats are done is simply to suppose that the shaman is somehow able to project his consciousness, his or her consciousness, into a higher dimension. Not metaphorically, as in Sylvester Stallone has many dimensions, not metaphorically, but literally, as in 1 dimension, 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, and 4. Because if you could move into the 4th dimension, the dimension orthogonal to Newtonian space-time, seeing what the weather is going to be next week is as easy as seeing what the weather is now. Seeing where the game went is as easy as seeing where the game are. Knowing who stole the chicken is simply defined by looking to see who stole the chicken. And I have noticed that all of biology, not simply shamanism within the context of human society, but all of biology is, in a sense, a conquest of dimensionality. That as we ascend the phylogeny of organic life, what animals are a strategy for conquering space-time. And complex animals do it better than simpler animals. And we do it better than any complex animal. And we 20th century people do it better than any people in any previous century, because we can bind data in so many ways that they couldn't, electronically, on film, on tape, so forth and so on. So the progress of organic life is deeper and deeper into dimensional conquest. Well, from that point of view, then, the shaman begin to look like the advance guard of a new kind of human being. A human being that is as advanced over where we are as we are advanced over people 1 million years ago, because we have very elaborate strategies for coding the past. It's a dimensional conquest. So that's part of what I've learned about psychedelics. And I could have left it there, but I never do. I always want to bring more in under the umbrella of whatever metaphor it is that's being pushed. And what I have discerned is that time is actually speeding up. That the universe is not what physics tells us it is. Physics tells us that the universe is a physical system, an entropic system that was born in immense energy and chaos and will run down with a bang, with a whimper, not a bang, run down into heat, entropy, and dissipation. The psychedelic data on this is completely different. The psychedelic data says what that model left out was biology and mind. Now, biology, you might imagine, is a fairly ephemeral, recent, fragile phenomenon. It is not. The average star in this galaxy gutters out after about 700 million years. Not our star. We happen to have the good fortune to be around a very stable, slow-burning star. But there has been biology on this planet at least 2 billion years, 3 times the average life of a star. So biology is not some Johnny-come-lately epiphenomena. Biology is a phenomenon more persistent than the life of the stars themselves. And biology is not a static thing. I mean, a star evolving now is not greatly different from a star evolving 1 billion years ago. Biology doesn't work that way. Biology constantly changes the context in which evolution occurs. The way I have downloaded this into a phrase is the universe is, the biological universe at least, is a novelty conserving engine. Upon simple molecules are built complex molecules. Upon complex molecules are built complex polymers. Upon complex polymers comes DNA. Out of DNA comes the whole machinery of the cell. Out of cells comes simple aggregate colony animals like Hydra and that sort of thing. Out of that, true animals. Out of that, ever more complex animals, organs of locomotion, organs of sight, organs of smell, complex mental machinery for the coordinating of data in time and space. This is the whole story of the advancement of life. And in our species, it reaches its culmination and it crosses over into a new domain where change no longer occurs in the atomic and biological machinery of existence. It begins to take place in this world which we call mental. It's called epigenetic change, change which cannot be traced back to mutation of the arrangements of molecules inside long-chain polymers, but change taking place in syntactical structures that are linguistically based. And people have probably been using language with considerable facility for probably 50,000 years, possibly more. In our own time, we have created ever more elaborate languages, ever more elaborate technologies for transforming, storing, and retrieving language, so that we are actually on the brink, of being able to give every single one of you the complete cultural inventory, the complete database of human beings' experience on this planet. That's what these data highways and networks are all about. The nervous system is being hardwired. But what I wanted to draw your attention to about this is it is not only an advance deeper and deeper into novelty, but it's an advance in which each successive stage occurs more quickly than the stage which preceded it. So, once you get the Big Bang, then nothing much happens for a long, long time. There's plasma streaming through the universe. The universe is slowly cooling, but that's the most dramatic, complex process in the universe, this cooling. Then, after a certain point, more complex processes come in. Complexification begins to build, and as it builds, it begins to happen faster and faster and faster. And the great puzzle in the biological record is the suddenness of our own emergence, human emergence out of the primate line. It happened with enormous suddenness. Lumholtz calls it the most explosive reorganization of a major organ of a higher animal in the entire fossil record. And that's, a great embarrassment to the theory of evolution, because this is the organ which generated the theory of evolution. We're not talking an appendix or an eyebrow here. We're talking the very organ which generated it. I think that we have taken far too much responsibility for what is happening, and that what we took to be a staircase we were climbing is actually an up escalator. And if you will stop climbing, you will notice that it does not impede your upward progress, because the ground you're standing on is moving you toward the goal. And I think that this idea, which may be the proof that I'm bonkers, requires a fairly radical reorganization of consciousness, because what I'm saying is the universe was not born in a fiery explosion from which it has been being blasted outward ever since. The universe is not being pushed like that from behind. The universe is being pulled from the future toward a goal that is as inevitable as a marble reaching the bottom of a bowl when you release it up near the rim. You know, if you do that, the marble will roll down the side of the bowl, down, 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 and eventually it will come to rest in the lowest energy state, which is the bottom of the bowl. That's precisely my model of human history. And now, bear in mind what the competition is peddling. The competition is peddling the idea that the universe sprang from nothing in a single moment for no reason. Now, whatever you think about that, notice that it's the limit case for credulity. Do you understand what I mean? I mean, if you can believe that, it's hard for me to imagine what you would balk at. If we were to sit down and say, let's see who can think of the most unlikely thing that could possibly happen, I submit to you, nobody could top the Big Bang. It is the improbability of improbabilities. It is the mother of all improbabilities right there. So I'm suggesting something different. I'm suggesting that the universe is pulled toward a complex attractor that exists ahead of us in time, and that our ever-accelerating speed through the phenomenal world of connectivity and novelty is based on the fact that we are now very, very close to the attractor. All Western religions have insisted that God would come tangential to history, but they all lose their nerve when you ask when, which is the only interesting question about that hypothesis. I mean, if it's not now, then what the hell difference does it make? It's just pissing in the wind as far as I can see. I think that the very real social crisis that is upon us, the crisis of population, of resource depletion, of atmospheric degradation, of epidemic disease, all these crises indicate that we are now down to the short epochs of this process of universal ingression into novelty, and that in fact it makes no sense whatsoever to speak of a human future. There is no human future. It's inconceivable, given where we are today, that to speak of the human world 1,000 years from now, or 500 years from now. It is literally, it either doesn't exist, or it's beyond our power of imagining. It isn't simply going to be non-polluting cars and smaller hi-fi speakers. I mean, that's an idiot's notion. Yeah, clearer TV pictures and stuff. It isn't like that at all. I mentioned this morning, how when you look at only one line of technological development, automobiles or computers, it looks like you can rationally anticipate what's going to happen. But when you realize that there are thousands of these lines of development, all transforming themselves, all moving towards some kind of omega point, then you realize that we're in the grip of what I call a concrescence. And I maintain that you don't have to believe me on this. You can see it from here. You just have to climb a high hill. There's one, it's called psilocybin. There's one, it's called ayahuasca. The view from the tops of these hills is of the concrescence. It lies now closer to us than the Johnson administration, for God's sake, in time. And, I have an elaborate mathematical theory to back this up, which you should gratefully learn you are not going to be flayed with this afternoon, but I think it's going to become more and more important for people to delinearize their view of time, decondition yourself from the lie of history. After all, if time were space, history would be a spider web. So bear that in mind.
All right, so he definitely postulates some interesting things in there.
If time were space, history would be a spider web.
That's a pretty interesting statement. Really, the question for me inside of that is like, what if our conceptualization, like he talks about with the linear time and everything, if our conceptualization of how something like that works or what we're actually doing, what are the implications of that, and how do we treat our lives differently to maybe try out something different?
Novelty. As a byproduct of the mechanism of biology, right? Is that what he's saying? Is that the purpose of biology? Is that what he's saying? That's a natural mechanism of novelty that ultimately completes or creates a compression that you are walking into inevitably.
Yes and no. I think he didn't really explain it very well in that, but that really the universe as a whole is just like a novelty-seeking, you could call it a device, right? That really the whole goal of it is to see novelty.
Novelty seeking or creating, or I guess is that the same thing?
They're kind of the same thing, because that whole idea of novelty is that it's something new, right? So if you're seeking the novelty, you're always trying to find like what kind of creation has happened, basically. So just said in like a more layman's terms would be like you're just always trying new shit, right? Like if this was true of the universe, then really the only law of the universe would be don't do the same shit again. You know what I mean? Do new stuff.
Even if it worked last time, do it differently just because it's new.
Right, yeah, like never do something the same way twice.
That worked really well. I don't want to repeat that. Let me try something new. It's hard to get away from that. Like, on some level, you find efficiency or processes that work. I mean, there's a level of not novelty, right?
Sure, yeah, I mean, I think we as humans, at least as adults, we strive for some level of practicality or consistency or maybe routine. And as a byproduct of that, we err away from novelty functionally because we're choosing something that has proven to work before, or as you could say, familiar to us. But like, what are the implications of choosing the familiar over something that is novel, when we definitely see inside of our cultures that we have a tendency in modern culture to fall into kind of like a rut and feel like we've been doing the same thing all the time, or even we talk about the idea of like karmic cycle. Karmic cycle is kind of a concept of doing the same thing again, right? And like even the goal of the karmic cycle is to like learn from that and then not, right?
Yes. So functionality of novelty depends on, well, obviously it's subjective, and something's novel, and then you find a functional framework for it, because we do the same shit every day. I mean, you get up, eat food, you put your pants on one leg at a time, right? I mean, there's some stuff
extent.
that's, well, sometimes you may put it on the other leg first, but the pants come on, right?
Maybe. I mean, someone living in a really novel experience would never, like wear pants
or define themselves to have to wear pants at any given time.
So, like, again, like, what level are you taking it to? Of course,
right?
But like, does it matter what kind of pants you're wearing if the thing that you're doing the whole time you're wearing the pants is something you've never done before? Right? Then technically, like, you could look at it from the angle that those pants have never been in that situation before, so they're new pants.
From the pants perspective. The novelty of the pants.
So you could say from the pants
or
perspective.
the pants hallway perspective.
The pants perspective, ladies and gentlemen. It's an important one to take into account.
There's a lot to be said for the pants perspective. There's pants hallways, and there's all sorts of pants universes that Salvia will help you find out but not figure out, because it's just weird.
So, I mean, like, what is the byproduct of doing something new? I mean, if we're saying that we're healing, or we're saying that we're, like, trying to live our life to the fullest, which is kind of insinuating that we've gotten done with the healing. We're trying to maximize how enjoyable it is basically what I'm saying. Either one of those, what we're doing is we're saying is that we want to do something a new way, right? So in those senses, or the idea that even the idea of like building a legacy, you're trying to add new parts to this story, or accomplish more steps on the human journey or something like that. So we do definitely seem to seek an awful lot of novelty, at least as humans. I think, does like a plant though, because often, like plants have a lot of this like fractality and similarity between, like, well, any two dandelions are a lot more similar. Are they though?
Well, then,
Maybe
okay, so
any two dandelions are a lot more similar than any two humans. You know what I mean? It's kind of the point.
Well, if using the plan as example, if it has desire for novelty, maybe it just in its linear timeline happens over thousands of years, whereas we have to make novelty regular, like every moment, because our day is a little different than plants. We don't just grow from a sprout and then open to the sun, just sit there all day. Like we have to make choice, whatever, make decisions. We interact with people, we go places. So it's like there's a constant state of a need or a desire for novelty that's different than, or right now novelty, or a measurably over a short amount of time novelty, which plants I guess wouldn't matter so much.
Bob brings up a good idea here, where maybe, to synthesize this in a question before I read his comment, like, can we avoid novelty even if we wanted to? He says, like a waveform up close, it's constant change in novelty, but over time, if the beat is steady, it's no longer novelty. It's normal. Even change has to change in how it's changed. Yeah, the idea being that, like, really to think that something became unnovel is to maybe not be taking into awareness enough variables.
You're right. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Like, I've had this. I've gone to work at this job every day for the last 5 years, but I've never gone to work at this job on May 28th, 2020, right? Feeling exactly the way that I do right now, doing exactly what I am, however many days I am old. Like, you could look at it in a lot of aspects where it is still a new experience, even though it's mostly the same experience.
Well, I imagine that could be like a looping station or something. So you add coherent layers that work, and then you add a new variable or a new layer, maybe speed it up, or all that shit, like the reverse it. All that stuff. It's the same things. You're just doing it in a different way and on a different layer with other things.
Yeah, well, that's but like I guess we get to the enough's enough thing. Like, what's enough different for it to be novel? Because
whatever makes you feel good in the moment.
Well, we're talking. I mean, like, maybe if you want to go with this, like, we're quick to get an answer. But if we're trying to find like some logic or rationale, what actually defines that in any capacity? I believe it is subjective. Like, and that's basically what you're saying, is just that it's completely subjective. But
at the same time, there's consistent frameworks that apply across the board. So you're saying like an actual.
Yeah, I mean, if we define novelty, any one thing being different would technically make it novel.
Right.
And if we hold true to that definition, then we can't really avoid novelty. It's like there's so many changes just inside of like the human body itself. I mean, inside of that video, he said, I don't remember the quote. I don't think you do either. But like basically that the human biology is like a novelty retention thing.
Well, like he said, yeah, that's what. It was earlier on in the video. Well, I don't know where it is now.
Yeah, it was earlier in the video. He said a lot of words.
Somewhere in there. There were a lot of things. But
Yeah,
it was like a machine or a technology. Biology was a technology or an avenue for an equation for the universe to experience novelty to its end, whatever that means, or something like that. So it's like biology is the avenue or the technology to allow that to happen.
Which it definitely gets to do. I mean, if we break it down enough and say any one thing, like every plant has a different experience, even if it looks exactly like the plant next to it, it's 6 inches to the right of it or whatever from your perspective. So it is different.
It's slightly different photons, different sun angle, and all those minor things do create variance. But it's like, I guess, how much of that perturbance or variance is observable that matters to your relevant observation.
And then like when we start talking about that, like what matters, again we get to this subjectivity of like where are we at with what does matter, like what are the implications of thinking things matter that don't actually matter, and how do we discern which is which?
So it goes daily life all the time at some subconscious or unconscious level, constantly guiding decisions or something.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, in the end, it seems like it's just a choice. And so then, like, looping back into the novelty idea that McKenna's postulating, what if we reconceptualize the way that we look at time as being drawn towards whatever our inevitable goal that we set is, instead of kind of working towards the goal, more that the goal is attracting us, and we basically, you could, I mean, if you wanted to get survivalist about it, you know, you have to just survive the process of getting dragged to the goal, rather than I have to basically do all the work and the slog to get to the goal, right? Like, I don't have to climb the mountain's dragging me up it.
So that's like the escalator thing he was talking about.
Right,
So step
yeah.
rising, you're having
Yeah,
to
just
climb
in a
up the
different
steps.
metaphor.
Yeah. That makes sense.
What are the implications of doing that? Because I think the idea of having to do the work all the time, and a lot, I mean, in myself and in other people that I've worked with, it's very much so generates kind of this space of a battle, right? And it seems very like tiring. There's a lot of fatigue with it. You know, they're dealing with the very difficult situation. You know, if I mean, if you're just being dragged up the mountain and you knew that, or you went on an escalator, maybe you would take more time to appreciate the view.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it just takes whatever time it takes.
Instead of focusing on the steps or on your feet and how to get up the next step every time, you can actually look around because you're already going up.
Yeah, Bob says here, novelty seems to be necessary for quote-unquote life. If you can find an outer limit or container that does not change, eventually that limit will have to change or be pushed open for life to continue, in his opinion. I found that to be true in my own personal situation. That, you know, every boundary that I've found, if I decided that there wasn't something next, my life got like pretty boring.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and if your life gets boring, then
You got a problem.
You could argue that you're like dead already, right?
Right.
Like, you may be just waiting for your death, but in a certain way, like, wish it would just like happen now, or even if that death is just metaphorical, right? That I'm gonna stop doing this, and instead I'm gonna start doing something that's like funner with my life.
Or even a death to a paradigm.
Yeah.
Like, if you know there's a paradigm that you exist in, that you can just see the benefit of that dying, so something else can emerge, even though you don't know what that is. This is a form of ego death.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that seems to me, I mean, although, like, it's maybe not applicable for the practical decisions and, like, to satiate the practicality that some people have, but literally just, like, orienting your entire life towards, like, what sounds funnest actually seems like a pretty safe bet.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, you might not have, like, the perfect career or be able to do this, that, or have some kind of security that you feel like you should have or someone tells you should have, but as far as, like, how you are aligned with yourself, it seems like you kind of trade off like that other security for feeling good about yourself, and feeling like you spent your time well.
Versus having fun.
I mean, orienting yourself towards like what just basically like what feels good, what sounds like fun in the moment, rather than like what I need to do, what's important to turn myself into, like what is the work that I can do to get to the place that I'm trying to get to, but rather orient yourself towards like, how can I have the most fun on the journey, since the journey's like rate is actually kind of preset, like it's inevitable, right? I'm being dragged to it. How fast I run doesn't matter, right? So like how much work I do, not so much. Like, okay, so at some point in time, I like to question everything, and I recommend that anybody who watches this does exactly the same. Like literally just question everything. It can't hurt, really. I mean, don't be fucking paranoid about your whole life.
It can hurt your paradigms, your ego, or it can make you discombobulated, but definitely, question everything.
Live like a child or be more childlike. They're so in the moment always. I mean, I think like yes and no. I don't know that everybody would be happy if they were like being a child all the time. Like, some people like these responsibilities, right? Like, think of maybe like somebody that really actually enjoys being, say, an entrepreneur in some way, and like, children aren't necessarily known for that, and in certain ways it's not functional to operate completely childlike, maybe in that space, and for the thing that they really want to be, you know, I mean, I think they need a component of that, right? Like, they need to keep hold of what they were as a child. I think you can't throw that away entirely.
Well,
but
what thing? Keep hold of what thing from childhood that's still
keep
beneficial?
hold of anything that was beneficial from
Okay.
being a child, right? Like, there's not any reason to throw away anything from there just to satiate your need for practicality or to like be adult. I know I stopped doing a lot of things that I felt were like, you know, like being a kid, that realistically I've since reincorporated many of these, and it's been beneficial to me. I like kind of threw them out because I was trying to like be more adult or be more mature, or like, look, Zach, you're 28 now. you shouldn't be doing this shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it was okay for me to do all the way up until now. But now that I'm 28,
You're
like,
talking about like practical things. Obviously, people think like, okay, I can't just like go smoke weed all day because I'm spending more money on weed than I make. So I got to find a form of income that is more functional because I'm an adult now. Or like,
I mean, I can't say that I was ever that deep into it, but like, see, that's down the line,
yeah.
right? Like, that's basically what I'm talking about.
But at the same time, you're talking about the other day where you're talking about going and toning on that concrete pipe and things like that. That normally maybe you would say, oh, that's kids do that. Or I'm not gonna do. I'm an adult. Like I'm not going.
Sure, yeah, like totally different side of the spectrum, but
Yeah.
perfect example, right? Like, you know, you go do that, it's actually a whole lot of fun.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't care how old I
Yeah.
am or what I'm acting
Only
like.
kids do that. Maybe I should do
Just
more of that
making
shit more
silly ass
often.
noises inside of a tunnel and it feels cool.
Yeah.
You know, and that's fine. Like, there doesn't need to be some reason or rationale for it.
Yeah.
And like, I mean,
Well, even getting rid of the reason or rationale that says you cannot do this or this will not be fun because this is for children and you're
or
an
even
adult.
like that to the point where it's like my time would be better spent doing this.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's like I have a to-do list like 75 points long. It's 75 points long because oftentimes I don't want to do what's on the to-do list, so I end up doing something else. You know,
Mhm.
and like. So in that situation, I could be sitting there saying to myself, like, "Well, you know, you need to do this and
Yeah.
that." And
Well, you have a
but
list of other
instead,
things
I'm
that-
like bouncing my feet inside of the tunnel because
Yeah.
it's pew 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 and it sounds cool,
Yeah.
right? So
At least it's like moments like that make life enjoyable, even if you don't get your list done. Even though there's a negative on that in a sense, or feeling like shit, there's still more shit I need to get done. I only have so much linear time when I chose to play in a pipe. But it
Sure.
felt really good to play in a pipe, so that list was going to be there no matter what. Maybe a few things would have been knocked off of it, but at least I gotta have fun playing in pipe, and that changes my internal disposition, which allows you to keep on going through your day-to-day life with this to-do list that you're balancing out constantly.
yeah, I mean, like it's not wasted time if you got something positive out of it, right?
I
So,
concur.
Maybe childlike in focus or actions is what I meant. Throw yourself entirely into your now, what you're doing. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the moment feels better that way. I don't think a lot of people feel comfortable doing that because they do have some level of like anxiety, or they get security from the idea that they have some idea what's going to happen in the next week, month, year, whatever scale it is, that they feel like they know something. I mean, like, it's definitely been a position of my own, like, existential, you know, weirdness at certain points in time, kind of like having the recognition that, I mean, like, well, one time that it came to me was like when I really took to home the idea that like we're on a rock flying through space and we could get ripped in half by a comet at like any point in time, or an asteroid or whatever. Like, it just like catastrophic event destroys everything. There's no getting away from it. There's no pre-planning for it. Like, it's impossible. It wipes out 99.9% of things, and the planet is left in an unlivable state. Like, that's a potential. But just like I took to heart like the conceptualization that was there, and then kind of like looking at my own drive to have security in the day-to-day on a planet that feasibly, like literally feasibly, could be just like completely annihilated by a rock flying through space.
Totally.
At any time. We're basically like flying through a cosmic shooting gallery with like a small rotating shield around us in the moon, right? Like, and does the moon even actually stop these things from hitting us? I don't really know.
Apparently,
You know,
when they do hit it,
that's what I
they're
hear.
like hundreds of miles not as deep as they should be on the moon. Based
So
on the other
that's
video we watched.
confusing, right?
A little bit.
You know, are they really good? Are they real? I don't know.
I don't know.
Nevertheless, the point is, maybe this could happen. I don't really know. You know, if that's the case, so what is this drive for me to be like making sure that, well, I got to make sure I have a stable career, and like I got to make sure I get a good down payment on my house so I can have a low rate mortgage. Like, I mean, like, I understand the benefit of these things at certain scales, but also you're on a rock flying through space that could get hit by other rocks, and that would be extremely devastating, right?
Right.
So how important is it really? Because you can't actually obtain it, like not to the full scale, right? You can't get to a position where you can guarantee when I go to sleep tonight, everything is going to be exactly as I need it to be tomorrow when I wake up. You can't guarantee that.
Right.
You can be like 99%
It's a
sure.
very high probability based on
Right.
past experience. We can't judge your life on past experience.
Sure. I mean, especially if
Primarily,
we're
anyway.
constantly like, you know, maintaining this novelty, or that we're
Right.
at some scale emerging into that novelty all the time. You don't know what the hell is going to happen in the next moment.
Right.
You never have any idea what that's going to be, no matter how much you might like get yourself in this, that, or the other combination of situations that tell you, oh, yes, my box is quite secure. Right? It, like, what is it, though? You know?
Right.
And it, like, but I think the important thing for this is that it's not, it can't be, and thus it doesn't matter. Like, it's not important to even obtain that because it's unobtainable, right? Like, you can't guarantee that we don't. Okay, this video, it talks about the idea of the Big Bang. Let's postulate that that's actually accurate. If the universe suddenly emerged instantaneously for no reason at all, realize that by all rules of physics, it can then completely cease to exist instantaneously for no reason at all. Also, this is like common laws of motion, equal and opposite reaction. That has to be a feasible possibility in order for the other to be possible. So if that's true, then like, who cares about your job security in a certain sense, right? It's like, there's just some certain level that you tell yourself, like, oh yes, right here I have the securities that I need in order to sustain the things that I need to sustain. But where are what are these things? Like, are they real? I mean, I think they're real to you, but how real are they? Because we should question how much we can resculpt what those things are to affect what our perception of our life is. It's like, if we're gonna be talking about like resculpting our idea of time and how it's being drawn, like is being postulated in this video, and this idea, getting rid of basically the memory of history, like how much recoding of your past or your future are you actually capable of doing? And if it's more than you think you are right now, like why aren't you doing more? What's stopping you from doing that?
Good questions.
I don't know. I mean, I think everybody can ask themselves. Like, I have really no interest in like necessarily postulating an answer to it, because I think everybody just ask yourself this question for like forever. I've never maybe speaking of like what Bob was talking about earlier. If you find like a boundary to this question, you just ask it again, pretty much, and it's still like, again, like in a sense, like a reason worth living, right? You're exploring something else.
So it does bring up the fractal video. Was that last night, early on in the evening? We're watching through the window and like the different patterns that come out. And so was watching that. I was talking about so that being like a visual representation of any circumstance that you find yourself in any given moment is some kind of pattern. And if there are variations that come into that disrupt it, if there's a way to resculpt that variation into a new fractal emergence that creates something new and beautiful in that moment. So it's not just novel that creates chaos or dissonance, but you're finding ways to sculpt every moment that creates a new fractal pattern that's something you couldn't even think of before. Right. Now it's nice because you're in this new thing. But then disturbances may come in, other people have decisions, shit, whatever. So find a way to weave that in so it comes down and then creates a new pattern that shows up at some point, which may take coherent choices over time, linear time, even in a moment, a few moments, or over days or weeks in a scenario. But eventually that new pattern emerges. So we're going to put it all in like words and shapes and colors and metaphor. That seems more, I guess it feels like, maybe safer, but maybe safer is the wrong word. It feels more holistic than just like a cognitive questioning of everything you just laid out. So that's true.
Yeah.
How do I think about that in a way that isn't just like cognitively hollow or something, right? Because it's like, it makes sense, but it's like, I don't know, how does that benefit me? But if I can use those same thought processes using the visual overlay of everything's this repeating fractal, I don't know, it seems to help give it purpose in a sense. So if you're constantly moving through life, but the control you have in a sense is really your perception and the way that you manipulate energy, but your own internal disposition, let alone the environment around you, so that you're always creating beautiful new things everywhere you go, at least from your perception, because that's all you can change.
I feel like in a way it's kind of like trans-optimism, in the sense that like optimism, pessimism is often like glass half full, glass half empty.
Yeah.
But this is more like making something awesome out of whatever's in the glass.
Whatever is, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I really think that's like the way to go. I think like the optimism, pessimism is like a dualism trap, right?
Right.
Like it's the above, below, but really the way to go is just like, well, what the hell is in this water in here?
Well, it's like, is it clean water? Is it dirty water? It doesn't matter. It is. So make something out of it.
Yeah, do something cool with it.
Right.
I feel like life feels better that way.
Yeah.
Is it safe to live that way though?
I don't know. 'Cause that depends how long it takes for you to make something cool out of it.
Is
I
it
guess.
is it enough to just have a bunch of cool stuff?
I don't know if it's cool to you and it's still novel and you're not bored with it. I don't know. Toys get boring. Doesn't matter what kind of toys they are. They're boring. Doesn't matter how advanced or how much they cost. They get boring because you find a novelty in it or a new avenue of perception through playing with the toy or just enjoyment, right? That's all
Sure.
the toy was. There's no additional learning to be done. It was
But
enjoyable.
what about like the things we call needs, which really, and like if we're to get very non-emotional about it or non-human about it, we can say that our needs are really just things we want so that we stay human.
Or stay
Right, so
functional human. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, needing to be
Yeah, I mean,
touched
if you don't eat, you don't drink, you're gonna
Right.
die in a human body.
Well, even more than that, if you don't have the basic needs for touch at birth and the different studies they've done where the babies were, most of them died from not being touched, like so the need, if you will, to be a functional human, again, these are all, what are these terms? But like to exist in this life in a way where there's some level of internal coherence or progressive coherence. There's a basic set of, it seems, human biological, neurological needs that need to happen in nature and nurture to have that experience, which is like,
Sure. The point really is just that, like, or the question, I guess, for me to you, is you called these. I don't remember what you called them previously. They weren't like games, but they were basically another word for wants, right? And we call these other things needs, but like we want them because we want to stay a functional human.
Sure, okay.
And so, like, in that, what is the real honest separation from what the other things are, the toys, right? Like, they're technically toys that allow you to keep being a functional human, but if you're the kind of human that cries when you don't have anything to do, right? Like, you get all bored and you whine about everything and your life's terrible and you're basically living something you don't want to, then those toys are just as necessary to your wholesome experience as other things, even though like they're not truly that. You
Okay.
just like rendered them that by needing them, right?
Okay. The question though, differentiating between a want and a need, is that where you're
How
ultimately
is
getting to?
everything not just toys, basically?
Okay. Versus what's an actual need, a real need,
Right.
perceived? I don't
What
know.
what do you have to stay being? And do we need needs? Is actually, I
Right.
think, a better
Yeah,
question. Do we need needs? Is need a word that we're addicted to using to justify our drive to obtain something, or is it something we actually need?
Yeah.
Because I really think that idea, like, okay, I've watched in my life as I go, like, what the fuck is up with this need word, basically. And it's not like I don't think anybody else should necessarily believe something about this. I'm not decided on anything at all, even myself. It's just, as I've gone through my life, I've questioned this idea of need, and in every situation I can break it down to some level where logically I'm like, well, technically I want that, right? Like, so why am I saying the word need then in that situation instead of want? Why is there a drive in my mind to say I need some food, right? Instead of saying I want some food.
Right.
And what are the differences in my experience of then obtaining that food if I'm thinking about it as need versus want,
Right.
versus am choosing to go and get it?
Right.
Right? Like, what if it's not a need or a want, but transcendent to all of that, and it's just like, this is the thing
Right.
I'm doing, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is want entirely like pure word? Like,
So I
I
guess
don't know.
if we're gonna put want and need into subjective terms, so like if I want my stomach to be full, I need to put food in there, or I need to meditate and imagine
Right.
food there, and there's food.
It's always got an if with it.
Right, but if I want, then I need potentially.
Right.
So there's no need. There's no real need. It starts with desire or want. Then therefore there are needs to accomplish that want.
So the need's only real requirement is the identity that it upholds.
The needs only requirement is the identity that it upholds.
I want to have a full stomach, and so now the need is justified because the choice position is full stomach,
Yeah.
and full stomach requires put something in it, right?
Yeah.
So it's now substantiated.
Or is it just another want? I want to feel
I feel
full
like
stomach.
it is, right? Like,
I want a burger to fill that want.
how is a need more important than a want if a want substantiates the existence of a need?
Right? Yeah.
You know, and that's the kind of loop back that I've gotten to, that I think, like, I mean, I've personally noticed massive benefits from just basically abandoning the structure entirely and going with, like, in this moment I'm making a choice to do this. Is basically the schema that I run with. It's not about, like, I don't have to figure out what I want or what I think I need or whatever. It's just like the choice that I make, and maybe there's a reason in that moment. Maybe there isn't a reason. I don't know. It doesn't matter, but I take this like ownership of it as like a choice and get away from this like, want need thing kind of as much as possible, and definitely away from like the need thing. I try to get away from the need thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, need. I mean, just the term makes it feel like. I mean, it's almost weird to say. It's like, well, I don't need anything. I'm whole inside of myself, so I don't even know how to use this word. But it makes sense in culture. But I
Sure.
think the way we're describing it's better. I mean, if everything comes from a want, then need. Would you say the need only holds
When
up
we
the
say it like
identity
makes
of the-
sense in culture, though, like, can we ask like what way does it make sense, right? Because it's just like it's a better way of encouraging someone to like get you that thing, right?
Right.
In
Yep,
terms of
yeah.
interacting with someone else or substantiating that you're gonna go get it, like, oh well, I gotta go, which is like I need to go. I need to go because I need to pick my kids up from school. I mean, you want to go
Yeah.
because you care about your kids more, and you want to pick them up from school because you don't want your kids to be standing on the side of the road waiting for their parent that was supposed to pick them up.
Yeah.
Because you care about your kids and you want them to feel cared about, because you don't want the other parents to be like, where the hell
there's
are
a
Tommy
lot.
and
There's
Jill's
a lot there
kids?
besides. I just
There's
need
all
to go
kinds
pick
of,
up
but
my
they're
kids.
really actually all once.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you have some identity that you want to be, and then you put all these other things around it. What are you actually cognizant of the idea that when I'm saying need, that I'm saying that basically like I'm pretty much trying to manipulate either myself or something else into justifying it more than just a choice that I'm making, but rather a choice that I'm forced to be making, right? It's required. The idea of need is that it is required that I have this thing, right? And want is I same as a need, no requirement, really. But if the want substantiates the need, then really the need doesn't actually have a requirement at its root. It has the illusion of requirement at that level of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I completely agree. Everybody needs food if they want to stay alive in a human body. I don't disagree for even a second. I eat every day because of it.
Well,
I want to stay in a human body.
I don't agree with that. I know that I believe the
want food
body
every
doesn't
day.
need food to survive, but in the basic day-to-day dynamic, do I live that way? No. Do what's possible? Yes. Am I living in a way that would
I mean, because you don't
substantiate that
fully
claim?
believe that it doesn't need food.
Right,
obviously.
or I wouldn't eat.
Exactly. That would be a waste
Right.
of money, right?
Yeah. Or
So
it's
why
like,
would
or
you?
I just want to spend money because it tastes good, because it doesn't matter, because it's fun.
Sure. I mean,
'Cause I want it.
you could make a claim that's like, well, I don't actually need food. I eat for mouth pleasure.
Yeah.
And
Maybe that's how we should eat. Just eat for mouth pleasure, and everybody gets healthier and happier.
sometimes with the
Eat
amount
for
that I
mouth
eat, I
pleasure.
feel like I'm only eating for mouth pleasure.
I got a lot of ice cream
Like-
tonight that I dawned on me earlier this afternoon that I will be eating for a lot of mouth pleasure tonight.
One meal a day sometimes, and it's like it seems like you're just having a snack.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so enormous, is because I never eat. So
He eats till his stomach is full and he's happy. He fulfills his want with that need. And another want. Substantiated by a burger.
yeah,
And tastes good flavored carbonated sugar water.
I guess the philosophical question is, what is the effect of this format of substantiation, right? We say that many ways history's tied into this, like the video says. We need to believe that, right? Because that's the facts. But like, what if that format of history doesn't actually match what you want to believe, and maybe that it's not even the real history? Like, we don't actually know, Need is a want that keeps things that are created from crumbling.
That are created.
I think I don't argue that it is that, but it also creates maybe the foundation of the things that we want too, right? Like the foundational blocks that we have to have in order to place the capstone on this pyramid that is the idea in our mind. We need those fucking blocks, right?
Yeah.
Like those blocks, we fucking need those ones.
Right.
Otherwise, we can't do what we want.
Yeah.
Like I understand that, whatever my goals are in life, they're not things that from the place that I'm at right now I would accomplish tomorrow. Like sure, some schema of magical utopia reality where I snap my fingers and everything around changes. Yes, realistic 99% of the probabilities that are out there not just happening tomorrow. What probably happens tomorrow is these smaller steps that move towards that thing, right? So tomorrow I want to do these things, but I could definitely say I need to do these things, right? I need to do these things if I want to accomplish the goal in the long run, or I want to accomplish the goal ever.
Yeah.
So what kind of format are we really putting ourselves into, though, when we say that, like, we need this stuff? You know, have you ever, do you fight with people over something that you want? No, but oftentimes you fight with people over something that you need.
I don't know. Is it toilet paper? And did they say COVID-19 is a thing that matters? So you go to the grocery store and
that was
buy
a
all the
need.
toilet paper. Well, it was a
You know,
perceived need that I need to buy all
normally
the grocery
people
paper
want
right
toilet
now.
paper, and then in that situation they suddenly need toilet paper to buy all of it. They stockpile it. This is a perfect example because in a certain way it does show that, like, there is a drastic deviation in the way that we approach a situation based off of whether we say we're wanting or needing.
Yeah.
So, like, I think this affects our relationships massively. You know, in my life, in my relationships with women, or let's not even say women, let's say, like, what you could call them, girlfriends, people I was having intimate, maximum level human relationship with, or at least attempting to, right? Like, as opposed to friends that were something lower, right? What defined really, like, the lower was really actually, like, kind of how many requirements I had for them because of how much time they spent in my space, you know? So with these people that we really care about, we need them to do a lot of shit, but, like, most of my good friends, like, I don't actually need them to do anything. I need them to not be like an asshole when I come around. I need them to not lie to me. But, like, why is that not the same requirements for somebody that I'm, like, deeply in love with, you know, or that I'm having this max level experience? How come my bigger experience comes with more requirements for the other person, right? Why do I need that? I want those things, right? I want to spend more time with them. I want them around in my life. I want to have that more coherent, maximum level, like, deeper engagement, companionship kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, that ain't all sunshine and rainbows.
No.
Turns out.
A little bit. No.
I mean, sitting in a room talking to your damn self ain't all sunshine and rainbows, turns out.
Right.
So wherever you go, there you are. Like, you're gonna, unless you can do that just fine forever, then you wouldn't be talking about trying to find some type of companionship realistically.
Yeah.
It might happen, but you wouldn't be talking about how you needed it all, because you'd be like, no, I sit around my room all day and it's like, it's all sunshine and rainbows. I don't really see what else I need.
Right.
Right? Or want.
I was saying, yeah, because
Yeah.
we're the want. Okay, so in companionship, the difference of friendship, where does it need? You have these needs from your partners, what you're describing, or differentiating needs or wants or desires from friends.
Yeah, so, like, what do I want? What do I need my friends to be like? Is a list of, like, 2 things. What do I need my girlfriend to be like? Is, like, a solid at least, like, 25 things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hence
And
the
what's
reason not everyone lives with you.
really the sense of that, though? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Enjoyable coherence.
why isn't the girlfriend having the same 2 needs as the standard friend, of which many are girls, right? You know, if we're not in an intimate relationship, you only got to do,
okay,
like...
so same time in those friend dynamics, if conversations ever get to a place where there's just people are, I mean, okay, let's go this. I guess part of it's choice, right? Because everybody's got problems, and everybody's problems are interesting to other people, or enjoyable, or coherent, or you can see how your problems are actually could benefit both of you. I don't know, et cetera, et cetera. There's a million variations. When you choose to be more than friends with someone, then you're choosing also to cohere, knowing, is ideally, if you've been friends for a while, you know what their issues are and there aren't. That's why they're a friend, because you know kind of where your boundaries are, where you cohese well together within a friendship dynamic, whatever that means, or business or partnership or whatever. And then if you want to have more cohesion, knowing that that's probably going to be harder if we are spending more time together, because we're human and still have shit. But I'm going to choose to pursue that over time, I guess, seeing how that works out, then months, then years, then these things go by. And ideally, all those little, what do I need from my partner, aren't like a list that I created beforehand. They're just an organic list that's always growing and evolving, so that we continue to go over a long period of time in a way that is beneficial, positive, and cohesive.
Sure.
As a general framework. But different than like a framework for any desire you'd have for a friend, simply because you manage your needs from them around also how much time you spend with them. Because if I spend more time with them, I might find out we aren't as good of friends or whatever, but it's our friendships based around the amount we allow someone into our life, because then it's our own issues that can come up with them, and then that can trigger things. And I don't know. I mean, how many people do you want to do that with? Right? That is a lot of work if you're going to intentionally engage in that on a regular daily basis with somebody.
Engage with what specifically?
The willingness to engage just by being in a committed relationship with the other person's humanness, right? Over time.
I guess that's a question of like in that relationship dynamic, how much of the humanness we feel like we are supposed to be engaged with.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I don't
want to be
really
engaged
actually.
with.
I used to definitely think that like I was supposed to learn from my significant other, and likewise they were supposed to learn from me, and it was like this teacher-student dynamic. But now I'm more like, I think it was a better operation to just be like supportive of the fact that they're going through that, and then let them do their own shit.
Yeah. Or both, or something.
So like you don't need to
right.
hear about it. You don't need to fix it.
Oh sure.
You don't need to uphold none of that. You just like when they're crying, you like come over and rub their back and say like, hey, I have compassion for that you're going through this, and I care about you.
Right.
Let me get a hug. Maybe try and tell them a joke or something.
Yeah.
But
well, then all those moments being like infinitely subjective and unique. So I guess there's moments where you make a joke or you ask a question, or I mean, it's like there's a million. So when you're living with someone, there's always opportunities to understand the equation that's in front of you. Let's put it that way. Whatever situation or circumstance has led to an engagement where you can engage lovingly, or there's like a million ways to respond, right? So just rub her back, or like tell a joke, or I mean, really, it's infinitely subjective because every moment is novel in a sense. And so finding ways, I guess, to make those moments novel, so that the joke was actually funny and you both laughed, and that's cool because this was kind of uncomfortable. Now it sounds like we're both happy. That's fun. Did we figure that out?
Isn't it a lot more enjoyable? Well, it is. I'll just make a statement of myself. To me, it's a lot more enjoyable to spend my time figuring out how to tell relevant jokes that make us both laugh than like tell the person I spend all my time that I'm around how they can fix themselves.
Yeah, totally.
Or whatever, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like I'd honestly rather just tell jokes.
Yeah.
Like.
But jokes in a way, or it's not. I mean, what I'm just thinking of the dynamics. Like, if I was telling a joke in that situation, there's some kind of uncomfortableness they're going through in whatever way, shape, or form, and that joke allows them to get to an internal place where whether they deal with the issue, who knows what the issue is, right? This is it could be a million things in this dynamic. Who knows what's going on inside of them? Instead of trying to dive in and figure it out and fix or help or whatever, it's just like, maybe I can make a joke, and then they laugh, and then it's like, oh, or you kind of move on, or they something in themselves they're able to fix or whatever. But the point is the shift was something enjoyable in the moment, not by dissociating from the issue. I mean, there's sometimes things that need to be talked about or whatever, I guess. I mean, there is. But it is in generality to be able to, I guess ideally to be with someone where there's enough telepathic communication, if you want to call it that, there's a way to navigate those situations just without all the conflict that words can bring.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about it. That's a lot of bad things happened after that statement. Yeah. And I'm not saying no good things happened, but a lot of bad things happened after that statement.
So the let's talk about it thing. It seems to be functional. Like if we get in those situations in life with people, right? They want to talk about something, whatever happens, situation you're in or something they were in, has nothing to do with you. To be able to, even through that whole time, taking it seriously, if you will, right? Obviously, this matters to this person, especially if it involves you or something.
Sure.
So how do you perceive that in a way that's functional for you? If they're laying through a logical framework, okay, that makes sense. And I can see how that works for you. I can see how it works for, I don't know, whatever. There's always things. Then also always like looking for an opportunity to make it lighthearted in some way. Because it's like, yeah, there's a lot of shit to figure out and like stuff. And it can get really heavy and just get focused on certain levels of perception. And then you can do something novel or a joke or something that like at least spins it back out. So you can have more circumambulation and it doesn't get down to this constricted viewpoint. It spirals down or something.
I mean, my own personal methodology is really just like focus on myself and make sure that I'm staying in like a calm and not a depreciated state, right? So that I am in the headspace that would even be like the kind of person that would tell a joke.
Yeah, totally. Right,
I mean?
100%. Because if you're being disrupted by someone else's internal state, and like you go to the caretaker position, right? Oh my gosh, you're trying to like match their resonance, like just be present with yourself. And then you watch them be present and like find some way to create a joke. Like, I don't know. That seems ideal for relationships. There's a way to there's an equation to figure out confrontational situations, long-term relationships, any relationship. There's a way to bring some kind of joke to it that you're not dismissing, but at the same time, it's part of a joke, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're making light something that's very serious sometimes.
Sure.
But then
Yeah,
it
I
can
mean, if
bring,
you can make the process of conflict resolution include laughter, like even if it takes twice as long
right,
to do that, it might be the more efficient way,
dude, really,
in my
man.
opinion. Yeah.
I feel like I've done that more with conversations, like waiting for opportunities to potentially, or seeing like that there's a lot of dynamics, but seeing maybe the most fun way to get through this is just as I go through this conversation, listening or participating, finding the right moment to just turn all this shit into a funny ass joke. And
Sure.
it just makes everything better. We laugh, we move on. Maybe
Certain
we
ways,
keep
I feel like
talking
that's
about
what the universe is doing to
no
all of us.
shit, man.
It's just waiting for the perfect moment to turn it all into a funny ass joke.
And that's where like days can get fun when like you're aware of those jokes. Like, okay, so the other night when I was laying down in the grass, and then like I was telling you, it's like, how coincidental is it? This is my own internal world, measuring it off my external reality. So in this movement of just thinking about things and really seeing and perceiving the agendas of higher level entities or just beings, right? Their agendas in these bodies or in this earth and this whole thing, and how seriously they take it, right? Very serious, some of them, right?
Sure.
And just like laughing about seeing how funny that was, and the dog started growling, right? And then came over to me like growling, and I kept laughing, and then when they sniffed, and we're just fine, and then they were kind of hanging out and circling. And then I would start toning, which is like the just tone sounds, and you'd see the dog start just whipping like a vortex around me, like come to my head and then whip off, and like it's just interesting shit. But just the thought of being able to laugh at how serious everything is, because it is serious, right? I mean, it matters. We have the Patreon staff for the Shipbo people, and like choices matter, like decisions matter. They affect people on some level, right? Into an interpersonal, right now in space time dynamic.
Sure. Yeah,
But
I mean,
then
like if
at
you
the same
care for
time-
them too.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it doesn't matter, right? The big cosmic joke of that dynamic. So like holding that internal state of knowing it all doesn't matter, yet I value the conceptual value of the moment, that I still do things that are meaningful, at least to me,
Yeah.
or something.
I think I mean for me the whole of this space really synthesizes down to that, like neither of the sides that we've really been talking about like need one in a certain way. Like neither of those sides is actually like the winner. The winner is just like taking responsibility and his choice always in the moment. Like this is just what I'm choosing to do, and sometimes that's not even like rational or practical or logical. It's just what you're choosing to do in that moment, you know? Like, oh, I'm 36 years old. I probably shouldn't go try to do a triple backflip on that trampoline, but never gonna know.
Yeah.
You know, like I guess I'll try once at least, you know?
Yeah.
Like maybe it's not logical or whatever, but it's always just a choice. You know?
Yeah.
And like my kind of thesis behind this is that I think recognizing that like need one, not really a thing, choosing one way or the other, that really like puts the empowerment ball in our court.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's really this place where that's kind of my whole angle, right? It's like what empowers us the most. I look at it that way.
You know, so the choice thing. So remember on my first DMT experience with Frank Castle in the Bronx, was part of that experience was this infinite space of understanding. How to articulate this? Like the yet for me, I guess, to be understood depth of choice.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because there are moments in there of like choosing to move forward with the experience or to stay in the space or move in between. Like, and
Sure.
it didn't matter. I could
Sure.
choose whatever I wanted. And like just the fact of choice is like this infinite contemplative space, but also it just is. You just make a choice. But like anyway, really interesting about choice.
Got to pay attention to your choices.
Apparently.
Yeah. On that note, thanks for making the choice to check us out tonight. Please make the choice to like, subscribe, share the channel. Make the choice to check out the things beneath the channel, all of the group things. And we look forward to seeing you again every night, 8 o'clock. Probably longer episodes when Aaron's not here and we're not sitting around conversating with each other all day long. And I have more guests and all these kinds of things like that. We appreciate you being here with us for
very
the
much.
hour tonight and talking about something that may or may not matter, depending on how you see it. We love you all.
Love you very much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Mwah.
Bye.